a new strand of engagement with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to enhance our cooperation and mutually beneficial investment relationship, building on similar relationships across the Gulf. The partnership between our kingdoms has helped to shape the world we live in and will be a linchpin of shaping the future through to 2030. But just as important as the collaboration between nation states is the partnership between government and business. So I will be chairing a new public-private forum between government and business on economic security challenges, with the first meetings later this year. And I want to be very clear to all of you that my door is always open to investors to discuss our economic security agenda. And our first task when Prime Minister Rishi Sunak assumed office a year ago was to restore that sense of predictability and stability that I know investors so cherish in the United Kingdom. Our task now is to drive growth, jobs, prosperity, and investment. And I know that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will be a key partner in that mission. But we should also never underestimate how much our peace and stability and resilience to shocks are underpinned by our prosperity. A strong and growing economy doesn't just allow you to invest in your armed forces, it also allows you to deliver for your people. It is a signal to the world that you are a serious partner and a key player. Those who will succeed in this age of uncertainty as new economic powers vie for pole position are those with the fastest growing, most vibrant, dynamic economies. And those nations and those businesses will get to shape the new global order. And the UK is laser focused on that prosperity agenda. We are wide open for business, a world leader in climate solutions, life sciences, and creativity. A wonderful place to invest and innovate, and a partner with whom to seize technological opportunities. Happily, these areas where we excel are the areas where Saudi wants to grow. So your Vision 2030 is our vision too. We're by your side, with scores of fund managers flocking to Riyadh and hundreds of UK businesses operating all across Saudi. And meanwhile, of course, London's global financial centre remains committed to being the preferred hub for this part of the world. Thousands of Saudi students and tourists are in Britain, and Saudi investment is benefiting every corner of our country. That is all part of a deepening relationship with the wider GCC, the UK's 7th largest export market, and with whom we hope to increase trade still further through a free trade agreement. Geopolitical shifts are a great challenge to all our economies, but we can turn them into an opportunity to build a new world order based on rules, competition, open markets, innovation, and investment. Because that is the definition of dynamism, turning challenges into opportunities, not ignoring the threat of climate change, but seizing the opportunities we have to build a green future, not shunning artificial intelligence, but using it to solve some of the greatest problems we face, not turning inwards as new powers emerge and challenges arise, but forging new alliances and strengthening old ones. That is how we will withstand shocks, build resilience, and embrace opportunities for all our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. We'll travel from the United Kingdom now further east to learn how governments elsewhere in the world are tackling slower global growth, rising inequality, while they tackle immigration pressures, changing global trade patterns, and the energy transition, just to name a few issues. We'll get the view from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, from India, Morocco, and Finland. They'll also be discussing how they are attracting investment from the people who are right here in this room today. We'll be discussing this all with Professor of Practice in Business, John Deftarios, in just a moment. I want to take this moment, however, to tell you about something that's coming up a little bit later this afternoon. We have the first of our 3 summits here at FII, Energy's Critical Mass. And the time could not be better. The United Nations Secretary General said that humanity was in the hot seat. So we're now ready for our next group of folks here on stage. Please welcome Professor of Practice and Business from NYU Abu Dhabi, Professor John Deftarios, together with his panel.
Edie, thanks very much, and it's great to be back at the 7th Future Investment Initiative, of course. I was listening very carefully to the board discussion today in the speech of His Excellency Yasser Al-Rumayyan, and he talked about the new reality actually needing a new compass. I was thinking in the context of what has happened over the last 3 years. Compressed period of time with the COVID-19 pandemic, a huge investment by the global community to get us out of that pandemic. Supply chains were broken, they're getting mended today, but it resulted in high inflation, high interest rates, and if that wasn't enough in the last 3 years, it's been compressed by a Russia-Ukraine conflict and what we see transpiring at the heart of the Middle East today. So the big question here now is, how do you maintain the investment mandate with this level of uncertainty? The board was a little bit negative on what 2024 is going to provide for us, but we're going to look at the world in a different way. If I'm sitting here from Saudi Arabia looking east to Asia or south to Africa, what are the opportunities that are on the table that can stay on track despite that uncertainty? Let's give a nice warm welcome to the panel. It's an excellent, diverse group. Thank you very, very much for joining us. I think I would be remiss, Ms. Rafale, if I didn't start. And it's great that you assembled this group with Turkey, India, Morocco, and Finland. And there's a lot of collaboration here at the crossroads of East and West with Saudi Arabia. But I would be remiss if I didn't start on the trends that we see today. Some call it the Table Mountain, where interest rates went up, and they may plateau at this level for longer to squeeze inflation out of the system. We had the supply chains that we've talked about in the past broken, but they are mending. But the growth here in Saudi Arabia is 8.7%. So how do you shape that narrative with the trends that are the headwinds that are facing the world today? And I think this is a great point for the rest of the panel, if we can cover that off. Your biggest concerns and how do you combat them?
Well, thank you, John, for the introduction and for moderating, and it's good to be here. Congratulations to Yasser and Richard for a great FII again. Well done. And it's good to be with my colleagues from around the world on this investment mandate panel. As already mentioned a number of times today, indeed, there are many headwinds. You mentioned interest rates, but we have supply chain disruptions. We have scarcity of materials related to supply chains. We have, of course, the remnants of the pandemic and the countries that have been hurt from the pandemic. We have still inflation and the remnants of the energy crisis. And we see that maybe most acutely in Europe, where energy cost and even availability is in question. And in Saudi Arabia, I believe many of these challenges actually play to our strengths. The kingdom has one of the lowest cost of capital. If you consider our risk premium on borrowing, the kingdom is quite competitive. Our credit rating is good. I think investors around the world look around, and what do they want? They want a stable country, politically, economically, from a monetary standpoint, a currency that's pegged to the US dollar for a long, long time, and is going to continue to be that way. Our investment thesis is set for the long term. We're not fluctuating from year to year. We have co-investors in Saudi Arabia that are willing to invest. I think another phenomena that we've seen globally is that many of the multinational investors are choosing capital efficiency while they continue to grow their business. So many companies, and if you think of hospitality, are going with an asset-light strategy. Many companies increasingly in manufacturing are also going with contract manufacturing. And when companies are going to a new jurisdiction, in addition to all of the stability issues I mentioned, they would rather have co-investors from the local economy who put a significant part of the capital. In Saudi Arabia, you can tick all of these boxes. You can tick all of these boxes because in addition to the fundamental stabilities that we have, in addition to the long-term investment equity story and thesis, we have also strong investors. We have strong developmental banks in Saudi Arabia that can lend at very low interest rate that reduces the average cost of capital. And therefore, while we're still impacted by sustained interest rates, and we hope they're not sustained for too long, we hope that tabletop comes back down sooner rather than later. But while it's up, I think it presents investors with an opportunity in Saudi Arabia that is perhaps better than many other competing locations.
We'll come back to your national investment strategy, and there was a tripling of FDI in a 10-year window going to 2021, and your mandate now is to make sure it's diversified in the non-oil growth we're seeing. But I'll do that in the second round. Barek, Dr. Yogu, nice to have you from the investment office in the president's office. And talk about headwinds, because you're looking to perhaps raise interest rates up to 35% now to combat inflation. And Mehmet Simsek, the Minister of Finance, made it very clear we're going to be very orthodox in this approach to restore confidence. You've been a huge haven for FDI over the last 20 years. It's more than $250 billion. In this environment, when inflation's high and we have the central bank and the Ministry of Finance stabilizing matters, what are you focusing on then for the next stage of growth?
Thank you for the question, and I would like to thank all organizers for gathering us in this special occasion. So, of course, the monetary stability and the price stability or macro indicators should be stable for such decision-making process. But more importantly, for the foreign direct investment appetite, we focus on some other topics. We accept that the stabilization should be there, and we are taking the necessary steps. So, as the country, what we are focusing on is especially. I'm not going to speak about the sustainability. I mean, this is the core of all strategies for all investment policies. But as a two main topic, we are focusing on the globally supply chain restructuring. So, as you mentioned, Turkey has become a kind of regional hub for multinationals, and Turkish companies are also part of this ecosystem. And we know that foreign direct investors are the leaders of integration to the global value chains. So, our focus is to make sure that companies in Turkey, both international and locals, because when you establish a company in Turkey, you're deemed as a Turkish company. So we are trying to make sure that they are integrated with the global value chains and they are moving up the value chain. So this is the one aspect of the supply chain issue. Secondly, since we invested heavily in our infrastructure and superstructure in the last 2 decades under the leadership of President Erdogan, we have quite advantageous position for, having a more central role in the supply chain, resiliency. So especially in the post-COVID era, the export growth of Turkey was double digit. For 1 year it was 35%, the next year it was more than 20%. So the exports are growing rapidly. More importantly, the second topic, I think, I like emphasizing on that, the local entrepreneurship, especially the technology entrepreneurship. This is, I think, creating a competitive edge for Turkey. I mean, for the the investment perspective, we all know that technology is the heart of the new economy, and especially for the foreign direct investors, those startups are becoming a major driver of the FDI inflows to the country. Just to give you numbers and to close it, back in 10 years ago, the early stage investments to those technology area was like just double digits $1 million. I mean, 5 years ago, it grew to triple-digit $1 million, and as of the last two years, it is more than $1 billion just at the early stage. So while they are making those exits and etc., it is becoming like snowball. It's getting bigger and bigger, and in the last 2 years, those technology startups were driver of the 1/3 of FDI inflows to the country.
Is it,
so
is it difficult to raise money in Turkey now?
It's so easy. I mean, all the international venture capitals are quite active, and throughout time we developed our own capital market. I mean, we introduced regulation. It is in line with the European Alternative Direct Investment Directorate, so it is quite a liberal environment, let's say. So I can say that the supply chain restructuring and the technology entrepreneurship is the main driver of the investments currently.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. Payush Goyal, I was trying to think of the best way to frame your position on the panel today. I would say the belle of the ball, right? Because you have a consumer market of 1.4 billion, but you have the presidency in 2023 of the G20. You said something very prescient to me in the green room behind stage. If we focus too much on the negative and the conflict here in the region, Russia, Ukraine, and we don't look for solutions, it becomes a self-perpetuating prophecy, right? That you could spiral down. But you're growing well right now, and you're looking at key sectors to pull in investment. Textiles, you've had a major car manufacturing facility. Japanese steelmakers have come in. Are they seeing the opportunity now of the new India, if you will, in this reform-minded process?
Thank you, John, and thank you, FII, for this opportunity. India traditionally has gone through a long phase of high inflation and high interest rates. It's only in the last decade that we've finally been able to rein in inflation. Our average of the last 10 years would be about 4.5%, as against double-digit inflation barely 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Therefore, a much more stable political environment, decisive leadership. At the same time, a lot of regulatory certainty that we've brought in over the last 10 years has made India a very attractive investment destination. We have, over the last 10 years, focused on a three-pronged strategy. On the one hand, we set our basic fundamentals of the economy right, whether it's getting growth on track, lower inflation, lower interest rates, high foreign exchange reserves, ensured that tax rates remain low. All the building blocks of a good emerging economy where investors feel comfortable. On the other hand, we leveraged our 1.4 billion people market, and a growing market at that. People whose basic needs have all been taken care of. So today, food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare, access to digital technology, financial inclusion, these are all areas over the last 10 years where we've saturated the entire population. We've made sure everybody has these basic needs that drive human work. And on the third, we focus a lot on infrastructure investments, which has given us lower logistics costs, better competitiveness, both for the domestic and the international consumer. On this three-pronged approach, we believe India will continue to be the fastest growing large economy. We heard the figures of Saudi Arabia, very impressive. I wish we had a little bit more pools of oil in our country. But we are leveraging our managerial talent. We are leveraging the skill sets of our people. the huge demographic dividend, and under 30 population. Our average age is under 30, expected to be under 30 for the next 30 years. And we hope to add a $30 trillion more to the Indian GDP in less than 30 years from now. So that's the India story that's attracting investments, that's attracting people from all over the world who see that, coupled with the domestic demand, when we look at our competitiveness on the international stage, India is the place to be.
Okay, very good. Interesting. Minister Jazuli, it's great to have you. And we have to commend the government and the IMF and World Bank for holding the meetings there, the fall meetings, after such a shock to your economy. This is an economy that's been diversifying for the last 15 years under the present king, and moved into renewable energy, has moved into manufacturing, has now pulled in some IT investment as well. But you wanted to talk about equity, and it's something that the CEO of the FII Institute brought up here, equity in society, right, in a more humble and cooperative society. You said this is a key point for you now when you're trying to attract investment into Morocco. Explain why.
Sure. Thank you, John, and then thank you, Richard and FII, for inviting me. Actually, I'd like to come back to the compass, not only because it's the topic of this seventh FII, but also because now the world, where the world is facing a crisis of leadership, we have the chance in the Kingdom of Morocco, like here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to have leaders and leadership. And in Morocco, our compass is our king, His Majesty the King, who gives us the right vision, a very clear vision about what we are doing now. And it's based on two main pillars. The first one is a social pillar. And it's very important to focus on what we are doing on the social state, social protection, universal healthcare coverage, education, etc. So that's the first pillar that we have to finance with the second pillar, which is growth, and growth coming from investments. If you look at the investment rate in Morocco, it's around 28% of the GDP, which is really higher than the average OECD countries, which is 22%. 28%, it's because for the last 20 years, we have built a lot around infrastructures, like ports, highways, high-speed train, renewables, etc. So now it's time to shift from public investing to private investing. Actually, we are 2/3 public, 1/3 private, and we want to move this ratio by 2035 to 2/3 private, 1/3 public, and hopefully there's a Moroccan momentum now, and it's happening thanks to, of course, the infrastructure I was talking about, but also the young and talented people. The average age in Morocco is 29, when in Europe it's 43. We have also affordable, available renewables, and we have also a market. We are, of course, 40 million consumer, but we are bigger than India in terms of consumer, as we have free trade agreements. We have 2.5 billion consumer, thanks to the 50 plus free trade agreements that we are having. So we are focusing on those investments, and we have some success stories, mainly in automotive. We are the first car producer in Africa, first exporter to Europe, and also in automotive. There's no single plane that flies in the sky that doesn't have a part made in Morocco. So those success stories will help us investing more in private investment, like EV batteries, or the whole value chain of EV batteries, or the green hydrogen as well. So, of course, everything is welcome to finance those huge projects in billions in Morocco.
Yeah, you did do these building blocks of infrastructure, as you said, in the trade agreements. We'll circle back about collaboration with Portugal and Spain. We had Gianni Infantino with the FIFA World Cup. We should talk about the influence that could have on your economy as well. Tablo, Minister Tablo, it's great to have you, by the way. Yeah. And don't want to get into geopolitics here, but I think it's worth noting there's a profound shift in your foreign policy and NATO membership in 2023 because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But if I look at the numbers, your exports to the United States are up about 38% in the last 3 years. Does this security apparatus change the dynamics in Finland and allow you to push out at a greater scale forest products, your IT skills, refined energy products as well, and you're also making an energy transition? But what does that impact have of that security umbrella, would you suggest?
Oh, well, that's a broad question. It's true that we are now members of NATO, and we are providers of security to our Nordic Baltic region of the Europe. So we are security providers, and this obviously leads to more stable investment ground for outbound and inbound investments. USA is now our biggest trading partner among, of course, some of the European countries, but we're really looking forward to diversifying the supply chains more. So in this geopolitical time, the diversification of supply chain is one of the top priorities. So that where I think Saudi Arabia comes in place also as a very important partner in this region. So we are doing a lot of work to get the supply chains work perfectly. And we need the logistics, we need the seaways, the trade routes open to keep on the economy boosting. And we have a pretty successful companies here already, like Kone, Nokia, Wärtsilä, and our companies are pretty competitive in the clean tech energy perspective. And that's partly because of our society. Like you mentioned, we have invested heavily to the climate acts. So we are already, our electricity is 90% fossil free. So we are going to carbon neutrality in 2035, but we are doing this, especially with my new government, we are doing it so that we secure the businesses' competitiveness and speak with the businesses directly. And also this makes it sure that we ensure the people's purchasing power in the times of inflation. That's the big topic here.
You mentioned the supply chains with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Finland and Saudi Arabia be collaborating. What do you hope to get out of it? And then I'll come to Minister Al-Faleh.
Well, right now we are, of course, looking for the areas in clean tech products, but also our strategy is to look for the mid-sized companies to achieve new growth markets. So our more like the mid-sized companies are looking routes, and I'm doing the trade promotion with them now all over the world. But we are choosing strategically the countries from each continent that we work a little bit more specifically. Those would be like in this region, Saudi Arabia, for example, but in Asia, they would be, for example, Japan, because they have a NATO affiliation. So we have a strategic mindset.
Yeah. Good. I think I would be overlooking quite a major trend that came out of the G20, and that's the India, Middle East, European corridor. And if I think about this panel, you all would be involved, right? One would say, cynically, it's a counterbalance to the Belt and Road Initiative, which is now 10 years old. But what is the opportunity that comes with it? I'll ask Minister Al-Faleh and then go to Mr. Goyal and then come back to Turkey, please. What do you see as an outcome of that? And can you have good relations with China and then else you'll develop an alternative road to Europe here for South Asia, the Middle East, and Europe?
Well, John, I don't see it as a substitute, certainly not a counter in any way. Our relationship with China and our attempts to find a place to play within the Belt and Road have continued, in fact, have accelerated over the last year. In this hall, we had an Arab-Chinese conference that Richard again organized for us a few months ago, and it was a huge success. And Chinese investments is incoming into the region and certainly to Saudi Arabia. And we see, however, this IMEC initiative as a realization of a number of trends. And certainly it's a realization of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince vision. And I think it's a validation of the soundness of Vision 2030. One of the anchor themes of Vision 2030 is capitalizing, not just for the kingdom, but for the rest of the world, our unique location as a crossroads between Asia, Africa, and Europe, and as a hub for trade and connectivity. And connectivity is no longer simply in the important trade of goods, but it's also in the trade of services, people travel, as well as, of course, the ever more important digital connectivity. IMEC also is a realization of the hard fact we learned from to accept. So regionalization has emerged as a theme. And you have this regionalization theme being activated through IMEC, where a very large region indeed, stretching from South Asia, India, through the Middle East, GCC countries, through Turkey, of course, Greece, and to the EU. And of course, it brings together, I think if you look at the government and the private sector in terms of how we provide the investors, owners of capital, corporates that have IP, that have markets, that have brands, places to invest comfortably knowing that they are going to be protected and looked after. So it threads together these countries that are strategically aligned and like-minded. It addresses emerging sectors that the world, no matter what the risks and cost of doing business, some sectors, and perhaps I should have said this to answer your first question, some sectors have to grow and have to grow rapidly. So greening of energy consumption, greening of manufacturing, greening of logistics, which involves bringing in new fuels and electrification is part of that greening. So connecting countries like India and Saudi Arabia ticks all of those boxes, and I think it's good for the world, and it's not certainly going back to your thesis in the beginning of the question. It's meant to counter any other global initiative.
Good. The G20 is a difficult structure, as you know, Minister Goyal. Sometimes you don't get anything out of it, but this is a very solid communique. We have this corridor set up. How does India straddle this investment horizon, right? Because you haven't expanded BRICS to 11 just before the G20. So if I look at it, it seems like massive complexity. How do you create opportunity out of this complexity that we're faced today when it applies to investment?
John, I think it's all about trust. The operative word here is how much do we trust each other? And what Prime Minister Modi has been successful in doing is building up trusted friendships and partnerships with countries across the world. During the G20 presidency, there were very, very complex situations, concerns around getting an outcome document, particularly since the war continued in Ukraine, the conflict with Russia. But India's stand has been very consistent that dialogue and diplomacy is the only way forward. This certainly is not an era of war. And I think that resonates with the rest of the world on both sides. And what Prime Minister Modi was able to do was generate the confidence amongst all the member countries of the G20. Now the expanded G20, we're really proud to have the African Union as a member of the G20, reflecting the voice of a large section of humanity, which was left out earlier. And I think the fact that everybody was very keen to find solutions to the problems of the world rather than just go around a conflict or go around a problem statement. Focusing on the positives, focusing on the good that humanity can benefit from out of the G20 helped come up with 112 outcomes and complete consensus. There was absolutely no disagreement on any paragraph. And probably one of the most successful G20s, which went around the country, which saw India blossoming from the old times into an emerging new powerhouse, a country that's coming out of the shadows of the past, embracing modernity, embracing technology, in fact, at the forefront of technology today. And I think we really are grateful to all the members of the G20 for their positivity in wanting to support the Indian G20 presidency and coming up with significant outcomes, which we hope will go forward. The Brazilian presidency has committed to take forward many of these initiatives. All our member countries and friends are, let's say, conspiring to make the world a better place to live in.
Good. In that sphere, we have COP28 coming up in Dubai in less than 7 weeks. And 3 of our members of this panel said I need to talk about the transition and the opportunities that they present. Minister Afale talked about the development of blue and green hydrogen in the country here. You have been in Turkey, an amazing energy hub, and you see opportunity here because of the young workforce to advance this process now. What are the major projects that you're working on, would you say, Burak?
Yeah, of course, on the energy policy side, throughout the last 2 decades, we developed an energy market which is liberal, transparent, and integrated, and we also have a free, liberal energy exchange market. So currently, we have a kind of installed electricity generation capacity of 100 gigawatts, and 55% is coming from renewables. So we have some bases. So on the wind, for solar, we have already some bases, and throughout those decades, we also implemented policies to make sure that the manufacturing of those equipment are also localized. And for the next, the future, agenda, we have definitely green hydrogen and green ammonia, and definitely the SMR technologies. So for the nuclear, small and medium-sized reactors. On the battery energy storage side, I think to have more renewable capacity, you must have base loads or storage capacity, and we have been investing in the factories for the batteries, and we have some projects on the hydraulic storage, and if you consider hydrogen as a way of storing the energy, we have that as well. So, but what we see, these ESG or sustainability is not a solo game. So we are much more focusing on the international collaborations. Actually, which brings me to the more comprehensive concept. Since we are talking about the new compass here, thanks to Richard and his colleagues, we have to recalibrate our compasses. So we cannot achieve those sustainability targets, but just single countries alone. And I would like to give one example with our relations with Saudi, for example. So in the recent decade with MISA, we have been collaborating on creating synergies between 2 countries. They also have some ambitious targets for the green energy and localization of the manufacturing of the equipment. We have some bases, and we are working on such collaboration areas. And it is not just limited to energy. So we can expand it to the tourism investments or some other manufacturing investments. So our focus, as investment decision makers or practitioners, we have to focus on not the competition only, because traditionally we have been competing on those projects to get them to the countries, but we have to focus on the new complementary areas. In my opinion, in this fragile, volatile global environment, the companies, investors, it can be corporate, multinationals, sovereign wealth funds, fund managers, they are looking for wider regions of economic stability. And as the decision makers, we have to focus on the areas that how we can grow the bilateral investments and how we can, enable a larger economic stability area. So this should be our new compass, in our opinion, and it shouldn't be limited to just energy.
Yes, well, it's also the Finnish minister brought up the same thing. We have to look for commonalities for partnerships, which is an interesting theme emerging from the panel that I was not expecting. Mr. Jazuli, you talked about the development of wind and solar in Morocco. Mr. Ofala and I had a chance to talk about the pipeline network that's being built, hopefully completed, like the Trans-Saharan, right, that would come through Morocco into Europe for natural gas from Africa. So you're strategic, very much like Turkey, as an energy hub. But you're also pointing to the future in electrification, particularly for battery development here. That's quite unique for Morocco to be focused on that area. Is that an extension of the work you've done in the automobile sector?
Actually, it's once again, it's a matter of compass, leadership. 15 years ago, there was a bet in Morocco, a bet on renewables for ecological reasons, of course, but also for economic reasons. We don't have any fossil fuels energy. So we invested a lot in renewables. So we have today almost 40% of our energy mix coming from renewables, and we are targeting 50% by 2030. This is not because we have the best irradiation, sun irradiation, or best wind exposure, but because we have the best combination of both. And today it's very important when you need intermittence, when you need regularity, it's important that you have the very good combination between both. That's the reason why a lot of people are now looking at Morocco, and mainly when you are now moving the value chain from Asia and close to Europe after what's happening in Ukraine. We need, and Europe is decarbonizing, so we need to have those renewables, and we are now betting a lot on EV batteries, for instance, because they need the renewables, as we are investing a lot in green hydrogen. In EV batteries, we have commitments for more than $40 billion in the different parts of the value chain of the EV battery, because as you know, there are a lot of parts in the EV battery. So we are now working on this very important sector, as well as the green hydrogen, because we are one of the main off-takers of green ammonia, as we have the phosphate. So if you mix the phosphate with the green ammonia, then you can feed the planet. So at the same time, we are working to link Morocco with the Europe, mainly UK, with the huge HVDC wire. It's high voltage wires that can link Morocco to UK. So there are a lot of investment in green hydrogen. We can count 10 times what I said about EV battery, almost $400 billion in investment in green hydrogen. So of course, there's a room for project finance, there's a room from private equity, and so on and so forth. So we'll be more than happy to come again and talk about the success stories.
Thank you very much. We only have 2.5 minutes left, and I think we should address the elephant in the room. I don't want to sit down for FII number 8 in the autumn of 2024 and say, wow, you guys didn't take out that compass and how to navigate the disruption. We have a major conflict in the Middle East. We've been living with turmoil for, over 20 months now with Russia, Ukraine. Mr. Ofala, do you want to wrap up of how do you take the compass out and navigate not just the investment landscape, but to maintain stability and to be able to continue and finish that Vision 2030 that you talked about?
Well, I think since you brought up the elephant, the overwhelming thought that I have, and that I'm sure everybody in this room have, is sympathy with the innocent victims that are suffering, dying, losing loved ones as a result of these conflicts. And I think that overshadows everything else. But for their good and for the good of humanity, we have to keep the compass focused on prosperity of our people as countries, as regions, as we talked just now, but indeed for humanity. The focus is addressing all of the risks and ills that have been discussed by building resilient economies. And I can tell you that in Saudi Arabia, it is a fact that we live in a region that has had its share of conflicts and risks over the last many, many decades. And we have the wisdom of our leadership that has built resilience in everything about Saudi Arabia, whether it is security, economy, our fiscal position, our financial policies, our supply chain. So we have seen shock after shock globally and regionally pass through, and it does impact us, but a lot less than those unprepared nations and economies. So we're going to build on that resilience that we have. We're going to turn challenges into opportunities, whether it's the macro trends we started the session with, or the specific issues that will emerge out of the conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, elsewhere in the world. And we have to do it by investing in our people. I think our most important resource, after all, is not going to be our important oil resources or natural resources and the critical materials that are available, or even our location. It's our people. So investing in our youth, investing in entrepreneurship, innovation, technology, and finding solutions for that. And I think just as important, investing in partnerships with friendly nations, many companies that have their trust in Saudi Arabia, that come back to the kingdom every opportunities that we have, not only to attend global gatherings like the FII, but indeed to put their money where their mouth is and invest. And if I had more time, I would tell you great news about how FDI is turning up in Saudi Arabia year after year, and we're moving as a top 10 FDI attraction nation.
With the goal to be a top 10 economy as well.
We're getting there, inshallah.
You know what? You can look at the world in a very different way with what's been thrown at governments and the private sector over the last 3 years. The fact that we're as stable as we are today, despite conflict, says quite a bit about collaboration and cooperation, because it could be much worse in different times. Thanks for convening the panel. I appreciate the invitation. Can we get a nice round of applause for all our participants? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And John, thank you so much. Thank you for that panel, and of course, great to get all of the views, all the news, everything that's happening in terms of investment there from KSA, from India, from Morocco, from Turkey, and also from Finland. Now, thank you all so much for staying with us, and please do stay with us. We have a very special guest joining us very, very soon. And of course, a lot coming up for the rest of the afternoon. We're going to be taking a look at the geoeconomic strategy, how we're going to finance it, a big theme this afternoon in terms of investment, capital markets, looking from turbulence to opportunity. That's what we want. We look at the high growth industry, and of course, we'll begin the FII Energy Summit. Now, I have a big request because we have a lot happening here at the moment. And as you know, we never shy away from a little bit of disruption here at FII. But now I have an appeal to maybe a little bit of physical disruption for people here in the first 3 rows. So please forgive me, but I do have to ask each of you to move. We need to clear these first 3 rows here. The sides are fine. We do have a special guest coming, and these 3 rows need to be cleared. So please move, if you would, to the side or a little bit further. And I'm terribly sorry for this little disruption, but it is just for this session. So I'll be most grateful if we can clear the first 3 rows. So thank you all so much for your cooperation there. It means the world to us. We need to make sure protocol is observed here and we get everything sorted in just a couple of minutes. As I say, please all stay with us. We have a lot happening here. And again, in the address that's coming up in just a few minutes, you will need your headsets. So I think they're already on the tables, on your chairs here. So just make sure that you're going to have them, and our security and the protocol team will make sure that we clear all of that there. So thank you so much. Now, of course, at FII, we talk a lot, but we put in place a lot of initiatives, we put in place a lot of resolutions, and we call for great action. And that is very much the topic of our next setup here. So while we're waiting, all eyes on the middle stage, and I would like now to call back to the stage the COO of the Future Investment Initiatives Institute, Rakan Tarabzoni. Rakan, I believe you're with us, and also, of course, the Executive Chairman of Richard Atias, the CEO of the FII Institute, the man whose heart and soul is with us here at the Institute, Richard Atias. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I look forward to
Thank you, Edney. Thank you very much. Thank you. And sorry, yes, for the disruption. But please, many seats are still available around us. Please don't hesitate to take your seat. In a few minutes, we will have host and we'll welcome His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Korea. Coming in a few minutes. But as Edney said extremely well, at FI Institute, we try to be not just hosting conferences, but we publish reports, and more importantly, we do a lot of call to actions and we launch initiatives. So today, as you know, the global landscape is shifting tremendously, affecting the priorities and needs of people around the world. As His Excellency Yasser Rumayyan said this morning, our main mandate is to impact humanity through initiatives, but also to listen to the priorities. So this is why the trends like the advancement of AI, the need for a more inclusive economy and ethical consideration on how to address emerging challenges are making the mission of FI Institute more relevant than ever. So for the first time, we are launching now resolutions. We don't just want to come with ideas to create debates. We want to build on our convening power and reveal 3 resolutions. And these resolutions will need you. You, our members, you, our partners, you, our guests, very important, resolutions that will have an impact on our collective future, focused on AI, inclusive ESG, and humanity's most pressing priorities. The resolutions are literally calls to action, to work. For me personally, it's probably the most important of what we'll be delivering this year at FII, the resolution. We want this call to action to be more inclusive and for our sustainable future. So it's my great pleasure to welcome on stage the board members who are the godfathers of this resolution, because nothing could have been done without them, with the great support of our board. So it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome on stage 2 very dear friends, His Excellency Mohammed Al-Abbar, the founder and chairman of MR Property. Please, a round of applause for His Excellency. And my very dear friend, who for the first time were able to make it, because we always compete with your own conferences, my dear friend, Peter Diamandis, the founder and executive chairman of the very famous X Prize Foundation. And of course, they will be in conversation with Rakan Tarabzoni, the Chief Operating Officer of the FI Institute.
Thank you,
Rakan,
Richard. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, so as Richard mentioned, we created the FII Priority Compass, which is a global survey covering over 23 countries, inclusive of all continents, all over the world, with around a representation of almost 60% of population, to make sure we are as inclusive as possible. This is the 2nd edition of the survey, and this year the results are very interesting. Number 1's priority, and I don't want to make much of your time, the survey will be available on the app and on the website. There's an increase of 30% of concerns of cost of living and quality of life versus last year, which is probably not surprising to all of us. There's also a 55% increase of world population highlighting social inclusion. What does that mean? That being the 2nd most priority item for humanity this year, it's highlighting identity, human connection, and the reliable internet challenges that mankind challenges. And today's internet is an important element that connects us all together beyond just the social or leisure connection, but more of work, education, and more of a lifeline nowadays. The survey also identified the 3rd priority being climate change. It was the 7th last year, and this year it's The third with almost 53% increase versus a year ago. So those three priorities tell us that there is a need to call to action. There's a FII priority resolution that we want to share with you. It will be on the screen. And we call to everybody to join us that in one hand to help be having a better humanity for all of us. What does this mean? It means we have three priorities that we want to all gather to make them happen for a better humanity to all of us. From our side, the FII Institute, we have three roles. Number one, think on humanity's priorities and show collective thought leadership to better understand the world's urgent needs, exchange on humanity's priorities to bring the world's leaders together to align on how to make the world a better place, and third, act on humanity's priorities to identify innovative solutions and locally lead those initiatives for investors to scale up and make all our lives a better place. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Dr. Peter Diamandis to discuss the second resolution on AI. Dr. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rakan. It was about 5 months ago, I called Richard Tias. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, there is something urgent we need to be speaking about at FII 7. Something that needs the world's attention. And there are very few locations on the planet that pull together the government leadership, the finance leadership, and the corporate leadership. And that is the massive transformation, the disruption, the reinvention that is coming as a result of AI. Not in 20 years, not in 10 years, it's within the next 5 years. And that is the purpose of the resolution we're going to be sharing with you. The speed of AI development is running at an astonishing rate. I think very few people really truly understand how fast this is happening. If we look at the numbers, what we're seeing is that the speed of computation, the amount of computation being dedicated to AI is accelerating. It's doubling every 6 months. And the speed of its acceleration is itself accelerating. The amount of labeled data is doubling every 2 years. What we're seeing is that the algorithms are improving at 99.5% cost effectiveness on a 5-year center. We're seeing 1,800% increases in capital expenditures by corporate, by VC, by all the funds investing massively into AI. And AI itself is programming AI. It's something that's never happened before. We're in the midst of an extraordinary transformation of humanity. And this acceleration is going to bring about unique opportunities for both investors and for our children, for our lives, for our nations. The AI market is projected to be about $2 trillion of increase by 2030. But for me, the most important thing is AI offers for the first time an ability to uplift every man, woman, and child on this planet, to demonetize and democratize access to food, water, energy, healthcare, education at a level never before thought of. It's about creating a true world of abundance. And it's about going from an information age to an age of knowledge. Imagine if each of us had all the knowledge accessible to ourselves in our pocket. So the challenge is that there are global risks, right? With great power comes great responsibility. We urgently need to align on AI, and that's the call here for this resolution. You see, there's probably an 80% chance of an abundant future where AI is helping uplift everybody. But the 20% downside is what we have to protect against, not in 20 years or 10 years, in the next 5 years. We have a 5-year window at most to align ourselves on this vision of what we want. Many of the near-term global risks are known, right? They include the use of AI for misinformation, for cyber attacks, for political and financial disruption, for the creation of bioweapons. Patient zero may be the US elections next year. We'll find out. What happens when terrorism AI brings down a power plant or a Wall Street server? But we need to do scenario planning. The medium-term risks are from the impact of AI on societal structure, on jobs. We're about to see the arrival of artificial general intelligence, Ray Kurzweil predicted by 2029, we will have AI as intelligent as any human. Elon says it's 2028. Whatever it is, it's not your children's issue, it's our issue right now. And what happens next is not artificial general intelligence, but digital super intelligence. If misaligned with the needs of humanity, AGI could have serious existential risks. So what does an AI resolution call for? And what can the FII Institute do to help? So there's a QR code up over here. I urge you all to take an image of it and to read it in full. But in a nutshell, the resolution calls on governments, AI companies, and investors to urgently promote and act on AI alignment. So the resolution notably calls for governments in particular to work with the private sector to define prerequisites for the release of AI models and to establish training data sets that are safe and pro-alignment. How we train our AI models is everything. These AI models are our children. We're giving birth to a new species on this planet. How do you educate your children is so critically important. The latter, of course, is how data sets influence these generative AI models. It also calls for the establishment of a global and inclusive AI governance regime. This is urgently needed because global AI risks can only be addressed through global cooperation. For AI companies, the resolution calls for greater commitment of transparency and accountability. Companies should commit to AI alignment, creating alignment plans detailing the strategies and processes that will be implemented and make this information public. They should also actively reduce AI risks by ensuring the security of state-of-the-art AI facilities and by adopting safety levels based upon the development of future AI models. And finally, for those of you in the investment community, which is probably most all of us here, we should commit to providing investments in only those companies who have committed to AI alignment as part of their policies going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Jonas. Thank you so much. I leave the floor to His Excellency Mohammed Al-Abbar. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. I think you have an exciting subject. I would like to take this opportunity to really thank all my colleagues on the board. These resolutions are so critical for all of us. If it's really AI or if it's many other targets that we are putting together. But for a person like me who founded a large development company for the past 28 years, the challenge of sustainability, the challenge of housing for the middle income, the environment is something that's so close to everybody's heart. And I think that's taken. But the bigger challenge is that while we have to work on all these principles, the other big challenge for all of us, people of the East, I call ourselves people of the East, is that this is where the population base is over 4.5 billion people. But we are not getting the fair share of investment into our part of the East. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity and a challenge as well, that we have to work hard at putting the right principles for encouraging investment into the East. Right now, we receive, I think, something like close to 4% of the world total investment on an annual basis, where we think that that investment is going to push economic growth, create jobs, technology, knowledge. Therefore, I think this is a much, much bigger purpose, which is something that's really close. Investment to our region, create economic activities, bring hope, get more people to participate in the economic activity of our region. So I think that's really very critical for all of us to put the right tools, the right rules, the right governance, for all of us to really see the result of increased investment and increased economic activities for our part of the world. And I'm really privileged to work with my team at FII, and there will be a tremendous opportunity for us to get moving. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude our resolution section. Thank you all.
123, 123, English channel, 123, 123, English channel, 123, 123, English channel, testing, testing, 123, English channel, testing, 123, 123.
Testing the other microphone, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you for outlining exactly what is going on there and the great work that's been happening with the initiatives, and to His Excellency Mohammed Alabartu and Peter Diamandis. Really great to hear the initiatives that are happening there, and of course all of the great work that is happening with the FII. Those three big resolutions that we have, the FII-AI resolution, the FII Inclusive ESG resolution, and the FII Priority resolution. Absolutely essential that we're all looking at them. And again, as Rakan said, we can all have a look at those and see what's on the website. There's so much there that we can be really looking at and making sure that we're up to date. All of this and all the great work that's happening, of course, informing everything that you are all doing. Absolutely essential, and tremendous work has gone into these reports, and of course the contribution that is happening as well from everybody. So when we looked back, I think, on the great work that FII is doing, you know, all of the surveys that were done, it was really looking about the priorities that are here for people around the world, and that's what was surveyed. Indeed, looking at the cost of living, the quality of life, all of that, social inclusion, absolutely essential, the climate change, how that impacts just about everybody, good governance, of course, good governance for everybody, and we heard that from our players there. Good healthcare to make sure we all have better lives, and indeed technology, making sure that that will be the enabler. And I think we've heard there with passion and commitment the power of AI. Again, that AI must be absolutely aligned to make sure that every one of us really looking on the same page and heading in the right direction. Now, please, of course, stay with us. We will be hearing from the President from the Republic of Korea shortly, but we are expecting our dear guests very soon, and it's just making sure that the protocol and everything here is in place and it's observed, but we will be with you all in just a few moments on that. So we have lots to do and lots to look at, of course, and we are going to be looking at what's happening in Korea and looking at the cooperation with the Middle East particularly, and how both of the countries are working very, very closely. But again, we're just waiting for a couple of minutes here. And so much coming for the afternoon, of course. Let me remind you of that. We will have a break midday and an opportunity for you to head into the Dome and into the other areas as well, where a lot of our partners are, of course. Take time to go see them, to see what's going on. Some tremendous initiatives out there that I know you'll all be very interested in, and they'll be very, very happy to see you come, go take a visit, talk to them, and see what's happening with their great initiatives. And a lot of topics, of course, going on here. But back here this afternoon, of course, looking at the geoeconomics in terms of what's happening in the world, and that big focus on how do we finance it? How are the capital markets? We'll really look at that in detail. We'll also look at investments in many other countries as well. Keep an eye on what's happening in Africa as well. And really, really big focus later in the afternoon too on the FII Energy Summit. This is something that's on the top of everybody's mind. And again, from all of the research that we're doing, it is something that's impacting economies around the world. It's impacting everybody's business. We look at the tight monetary policy at the moment. We look at the inflation. It all comes together, the big ecosystem that all of you really have to take these challenges, look at them very, very carefully, and of course, move them forward from there. So very, very soon, we're going to be joined by our distinguished guests, but as you can imagine, it just takes a little clearance from security coming in, and everybody will be with you in just a couple of minutes, so we will be back on that. So I think that's about it. We'll just hold on for a couple of minutes, and we'll be back as soon as our dear guests arrive. Thank you, and stay with us. Thank you.